Welcome, my fellow watchers. Today a video from you, from me, to you. Title, what is hypnosis? What is hypnosis? And I've been thinking about this video actually for a while, wanted to do it for a while by now. And whenever I want to do it, something came in the way. I had a call coming up or whatever, client work. And so it took me some time to actually gather my thoughts to record this video. But here we go. What is actually hypnosis? And this is a good question, but it's also a question that can be answered in many different ways. You can just do by yourself a Google search, what is hypnosis, and you'll find all kinds of different definitions of hypnosis. So for example, you will find people saying hypnosis is a trance state. It's an induced trance state where you're more likely to follow suggestions and your unconscious mind is wide open to the suggestions and to execute them. Now there's another definition where it basically says you're hacking the REM state, the sleep state where you're dreaming, but you're wide awake. That's another definition. There's definitions out there where we say, well, it's a highly focused state and a selective focus to the exclusive of everything else. So you blend everything else out and you're focusing on one thing, and that thing becomes more of your reality. So there's all kinds of definitions out there. There's actually also hypnosis without trance. You can check out James Tripp. He's a great guy, and in my view, he has quite well demonstrated that hypnosis is not necessarily linked to a special state, but rather that it is a focus and it's a loop kind of thing where it draws your attention in. And as said, when our attention gets drawn into something, that particular part starts becoming our reality, or a reality we can experience at least. So for example, we can take a book, right? You can focus on a book so intently that you're forgetting where you're sitting, you're forgetting time, you're forgetting your surroundings. You can be so absorbed in the book that someone can call your name and you don't even register it because you're so focused on it. And the most important part is that when you're focused on the book, it becomes alive. I mean, when you look at it more objectively, it's just ink on paper. That's it. That's all a book really is. But when you read a book, the characters become alive and suddenly you're drawn into the drama. You start to see pictures and all kinds of things. And they might be not very conscious of them. Some people are very conscious of them, and you're completely immersed into this world. And that's also a hypnotic state, we could say, or just a hypnotic reality, right? Now, when I first started with hypnosis, I was first quite focused on the idea of trance and inducing trance and hypnotic phenomena. Hypnotic phenomena are, for example, hallucinations or an arm levitation, where the arm is moving by itself without you consciously doing anything, forgetting your name, amnesia, that would be, and other things. So that was kind of my focus, and I was really fascinated by it because it looked so amazing that our mind is capable of creating something where we can experience something extraordinary, something that's not what we are used to. Now, when we actually look at it, all the different phenomena, they are present in our daily lives, right? You want to say something, it's the tip of your tongue, and you're like, and it's gone. It's gone from your mind. You're like, what is it, right? And then 5 minutes later, you're like, right, that's what it was, right? You had a short amnesia. It was gone from your mind. When you look at hallucination, that's an everyday occurrence as well. You can look for your key, and you're everywhere looking for your key, and you'll check, and you go away, and you check somewhere else, and you come back, and there they are. You're like, what? I just looked there 5 minutes ago, and they weren't there, right? So that's, again, it's an everyday occurrence. So I quickly shifted away from kind of the traditional idea of hypnosis being a state-specific kind of state that you need to induce and you need to go into hypnosis, to more, the kind of hypnosis without trance, more the kind of focus, the more the kind of reality tunnels that we go into. And so when you look at some other videos where I say, thoughts hypnotize you, I'm looking at that where a thought can come into your mind and you start believing it. And you start believing it to that degree that the world starts looking to you in that way, right? So let's take, for example, that the world is bad, right? So if the world is bad, which was a view that I had when I was younger, the world is a fucked up place, and you see it that way, everything starts to look and gives you evidence that this is actually true and this is how the world is, right? Now, when you have a different view on say the world is beautiful and full of bunnies and all of that, you will find evidence to support that as well, because we're selectively taking the facts that actually match our worldview. So we are constantly, mind you, we are constantly in hypnosis. Hypnosis is a natural function of our mind that allows us to function. And as I went deeper into this, I started to think, well, even just the point that we can have an experience, right? I mean, when you go to the very fundamental of us having an experience, right now, you watching this video, me talking here, there's an experience happening, right? And that by itself is, in a way, a hypnosis already, because there's something happening, a real-time process in your mind right now that creates this entire reality for you to experience, right? That's crazy. I mean, that's absolutely crazy, because when you look at it, there's something there, quantum soup, whatever you call it. There's some stuff coming into your eyeballs, and then there's magic happening in your brain where suddenly out of that vast kind of information, you see a coherent picture where you can act and interact from. And so for me, at some point, it just didn't make sense to call what I do hypnosis anymore, because it's so fundamental and it's so much vast than what usual people look as hypnosis. That's why I started calling myself a transformational professional. I started to call myself a coach and this kind of thing, because hypnosis is literally everywhere. It's literally everywhere, the way I see it. Now, of course, if you take a different kind of definition and you narrow it down, then it's something different, and then maybe it makes more sense to call it hypnosis or to call yourself a hypnotist. But the way I see it, the biggest hypnosis there is the hypnosis that we're walking in every day. That there's a reality created from within at any given point that we can experience. And that's magical. For me, that's absolutely mind-blowing, where we actually step back and become aware that everything around you is actually happening within you. It's actually perceived within you. That's mind-boggling. The screen you're looking at is inside of you, right? So it looks like it's out there. It looks like whatever there is out there, right? But we don't really know that. All we are perceiving is happening in the brain, right? Now you can take it a step further, and there's a good TED Talk by Donald Hoffman. It says that, what's the talk called? Do we see reality as it is? That's right. Do we see reality as it is? That's a TED Talk by Donald Hoffman. Well worth watching. Now, you'll see probably lots of people disagreeing with it, but he has a point where we are basically saying time and space is like an interface. And the objects are like icons on this interface on the desktop. And that is not reality, but we're mistaking that for reality. We think that the world looks as it is. Now, what I'm going to say sounds like, or is a bit like, just a snake biting its own tail, because the bag cannot contain itself, right? So we're using metaphors for something that I believe is really something there, and that is that when you look at it, like for example this hand, you see the hand as you see it, right? Now if I show this hand to a snake, they will see completely different, right? They will see heat waves and whatever. When you see it to a frog, they probably doesn't even see much of a hand when it's like this, but when I move it really quickly, it sees it much more accurately. It sees it much more clearly, right? So there's all those kind of different perceptive models that we have, and those perceptive models have evolved to serve us, right? But we don't see reality as it is, because otherwise it'd be like, well, does the snake see the reality as it is? Do we see reality as it is, or is the frog, or the dog, or all the other species, right? So we don't see reality as it is. And that means though that if that's actually true, and this metaphor of the desktop and the interface and all of that, that even the brain is still an icon, it's still a symbol on the desktop. It's not the brain that creates reality, it's not the brain that has any causal power in that. It looks like it does, but it doesn't. That would be basically the more coherent and more consistent way of arguing this way. Now obviously we're taking this kind of information from observations and then we're making this kind of claim, which in itself is a bit like, you know, pulling the rug underneath yourself out. So it doesn't quite work, but still I do think there's a valid point there. And in the end we don't really know what reality really is, right? But just knowing that there's some kind of magic happening that creates an experience that we are experiencing is amazing. And when we go further with that, there's an implication of that, and that is whatever you're feeling is that moment-to-moment creation of reality within you. And it has nothing to do with a situation or how someone is doing. So it means that the feelings you're experiencing are telling you about this process, and I call this process thought in the moment. About thought in the moment, and it's not one thought, it's about the entire creation of reality that we're experiencing, that we're hypnotized into, right? This is the biggest hypnosis for me. We're hypnotized into this reality and we're feeling it and experiencing it. And it looks to us like, for example, that my stress is coming from the to-do list that I have to do. But when we actually look at it, the to-do list has no magical power. There's no like kind of emotion installed into the to-do list. And one day you can look at the to-do list and it kind of just leaves you cold. You're like, whatever, I'm gonna do and play golf. And then other days you look at it and you're really stressed and you could swear it's coming from the to-do list. That's how hypnotic it is, how real it looks. But it doesn't. It doesn't come from the to-do list. And what I love about that is that in any situation you've been struggling or having difficulties or anything like that, you could have a realization, an insight that allows you to have a different experience of that. For example, you can be really always like getting really irritated and agitated with someone in the office or at home with your family, something like that. And at some point it doesn't bother you anymore. It's not like the person has changed, they still do whatever they do, but it doesn't affect you anymore. Because the cause was never outside. It was never the other person, it was always coming from within. And that, I think, is one of the biggest realizations we can have. And so that's what I'm really passionate about, and that's where I see hypnosis on a big scale. Now obviously you might disagree with me and be like, no, this doesn't make sense, it's too broad and all of that. And that's fine with me. But I just want to give you a spectrum from the beginning of different kinds of definitions to what I see now, what I'd call hypnosis, or the biggest hypnosis there is, right? So I hope you enjoyed this video. If you did, you can share it, you can like it, you can subscribe, whatever you want. I know I'm not super regular with my videos, but whenever I get an inspiration, I do try to record it. Often I just have my phone because that's the best way. I get the inspiration, I just record it in the moment. But I thought maybe I'll just try to do this and give you an experience of a more professionally made video. Anyways, take care, have a lovely day. I see you next time.